Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Bhalabha Girivara Dhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Bhalava Girivara Dhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotarashata Shishimadhi Sevaimve Seisi Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Brinda Ki Grantarash Shimam Bhagavatam Ki Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shishiguru and Shiguranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, the Summon Bonon, Chapter 87, the Prayers by the Personified Vedas, text number 25. Janin asata sato mritin uttatmani jechavidam. Sorry. Do it again. You got it? $25. Janin ashata sato mritin utatmani jechabhidham. Vipanam ritan smaranti upadishanti tarupitai. Trigunamajapu Trigunamajapuman Trigunamajapunam iti bhidaja abodhakrita. Twajina tattaparatra sababhed ababodha rase. Janin ashat Janin ashatta sato mritin utatmani jechabhidham. Vipanamritan smaranti upadishanti tarupat ur arupitai. Trigunamaya puman iti bhidajat abodakrita. Twajina paratra Twajina tatta Twajina tatta paratrasha bhavet abodat ababodarase. Janin ashatta soto Janin ashatta sato mriting utatmani jechabhidam. Vipanamritam smarantyupa dishanti tat arupitai. Trigunamaj Trigunamaya puman iti bidajat abodhakrita. Twajina tatta paratrasha bhavet abodada risha rase. Yeah, then you have to get that meter. It's like a practice in rhythm, no? Yanin, creation. Ashata, of the manifest world from atoms. Sataha, of that which is eternal. Mritin, destruction. Uta, also. Atmani, in the soul. Ye, who. Cha, and. Bhidam, duality. Vipanam, mundane, business. Ritam, real. Smaranti, declare authoritatively. Upadishanti, teach. Te, they. Arupitai, in terms of illusion imposed on reality. Three. Guna, of the material modes. Mayaha, composed. Puman, the living entity. Iti, thus. Bhida, dualistic conception. Yat, which. Abodha, by ignorance. Krita, created, to allí, in you, na, not, tataha, to such, paratra, transcendental, saha, that ignorance, bhavet, can exist, abhabodha, total consciousness, rase, whose composition, translation, and purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Suppose authorities who declare that matter is the origin of existence, that the permanent qualities of the soul can be destroyed, that the self is composed of separate aspects of spirit and matter, or that material transactions constitute reality. All such authorities base their teachings on mistaken ideas that hide the truth. The dualistic conception that the living entity is produced from the three modes of nature is simply a product of ignorance. Such a conception has no real basis in you, for you are transcendental to all illusions and always enjoy perfect and total awareness. Purport. The true position of the Supreme Personality is a sublime mystery, as is also the dependent position of the Jiva soul. Most thinkers are mistaken in one way or another about this truth, since there are countless varieties of false designations that can cover the soul and create illusion. Foolish conditioned souls submit to obvious delusions, but the illusory power of Maya can easily subvert the intelligence of even the most sophisticated philosophers and mystics. Thus, they, thus there are always divergent schools of thought propounding conflicting theories concerning basic principles of truth. In the traditional Indian philosophy, the followers of Vaisheshika, Nyaya, Sankhya, Yoga, and Mimamsa philosophies are all, Yoga, Mimamsa philosophies all have their own erroneous ideas, which the personified Vedas point out in this prayer. The Vaisheshika says that the visible universe is created from an original stock of atoms, Yanin Ashata, as Kanada Rishi of Vaisheshika Sutras 7.120 states, Nityam Parimandalam, quote, that which is of the smallest size, the atom, is eternal. End of quote. Kanada and his followers also postulate eternality of other non-atomic entities, including the souls who become embodied and even a supreme soul. But in Vaisesika cosmology, the souls and the super souls play only token roles in the atomic production of the universe. Srila Krishna Dvaipayan Vedavyas criticized this position in his Vedanta Sutras 2.2.12. Ubha yatapina karmatas tat abhava. According to this sutra, one cannot claim that at the time of creation, atoms first combine together because they're impelled by some karmic impulse adhering in the atoms themselves. Since atoms by themselves in the primeval state before combining into complex objects have no ethical responsibility that might lead them to acquire pious and sinful reactions. Nor can the individual combinations of atoms be explained as a result of the residual karma of the living entities who lie dormant prior to the creation. Since these reactions are each jiva's own and cannot be transferred from them even to other jivas, what to speak to inert atoms. Alternative, the phrase Janin Ashata can be taken to allude to the yoga philosophy of Patanjali Rishi, inasmuch as his Yoga Sutras teach one how to achieve the transcendental status of Brahmanhood by a mechanical process of exercise and meditation. Patanjali's yoga method is here called asat because it ignores the essential aspect of devotion, surrender to the will of the Supreme Person. As Lord Krishna stated in the Bhagavad Gita 17:28, Asradadaya hutandatam tapas taptam kritam chayat asat ityuchate partha nachatat pretyana pretyano iha. Quote, anything done as sacrifice, charity, or penance without faith in the Supreme, O son of Pritha, is impermanent. It is called asat, and it is useless both in this life and in the next. End of quote. The Yoga Sutras acknowledge the personality of Godhead in an oblique way, but only as a helper whom the advancing yogi can utilize. Ishvara pranida vatva. Quote, devotional meditation on God is yet another means of achieving concentration. End of quote. This is a Yoga Sutra 123. In contrast, Bhadarajam Vedavyas' philosophy of Vedanta emphasizes devotional service not only as the primary means to liberation, but also as identical with liberation itself. A pranayat tatrapi hidrishtam. Quote, worship of the Lord continues up to the point of liberation, and indeed goes on in the liberated state also, as the Vedas reveal. Vedanta Sutra 4.1.12. Gautama Rishi, in his Nyaya Sutras, proposed that one can obtain liberation by negating both illusion and unhappiness. Dukkha janma pravriti dosha mitya jnananam utaro paye tat anantararabhavat apavargaha. Quote, by successively dispelling false conceptions, bad character, entangling action, rebirth, and misery, the disappearance of one of these allowing the disappearance of the next, one can achieve final liberation. Nyaya Sutra 1.1.2. But since Nyaya philosophers believe that awareness is not an essential quality of the soul, they teach that a liberated soul has no consciousness. The Nyaya idea of liberation thus puts the soul in the condition of a dead stone. This attempt by the Nyaya philosophers to kill the soul's innate consciousness is here called Sato Mritin by the personified Vedas. But the Vedanta Sutra 2.3.17 unequivocally states Gyota Eva, quote, the Jiva soul is always a knower, end of quote. Although the soul is in truth both conscious and active, the proponents of Sankhya philosophy wrongly separate these two functions of the living force. Atmani ye cha bhidham, ascribing consciousness to the soul, Purusha, and activity to material nature, Prakriti, according to the Sankhya Karika 9:20. Tasmach cha viparyasat sidam sakshi tvam purushasya kaivalyam madhya kaivalyam madhya istyam drastritvam akritri babas cha. Quote, thus, since the apparent difference between Purushas are only superficial, being due to the various modes of material of nature that covers them, the Purusha's the Purusha's true status is proven to be that of a witness, characterized by his separateness, his passive indifference, his status of being an observer, and his inactivity. Tasmat, tasmat tat samyogat acetanam chetana vat ivalingam gunakartritve pitata karteva bhavatyudashina. Quote, those by contact with the soul, the unconscious subtle body seems to be conscious, while the soul appears to be the doer, although he is aloof from the activities of nature's modes. End of quote. Srila Vyasadeva refutes this idea in the section of Vedanta Sutra 2.3.31 to 39 that begins Karta Shastrartha Bhatva. Quote, the Jiva soul must be a performer of actions because the injunctions of Scripture must have some purpose. End of quote. Acharya Baladev Vidyabhushan in his Govinda Vasha explains, quote, the Jiva, not the modes of nature, is the doer. Why? Because the injunctions of the Scriptures must have some purpose. Shastrartha Bhatvat. For example, such scriptures injunctions as Swarga Kamo Yayeta, quote, one who desires to obtain to heaven should perform ritual sacrifice, and Atmanam Eva Lokam Upashita, Brihat Aranyaka Upanishad 1.4.15. One should worship with the aim of attaining the spiritual kingdom, are meaningful only if a conscious doer exists. If the modes of nature were the doers, these statements will serve no purpose. After all, scriptural injunctions engage the living entity in performing prescribed actions by convincing him that he can act to bring about certain enjoyable results. Such mentality cannot be aroused in the inert modes of nature. Jaimini Rishi, in his Purpa Mimamsa Sutras, present material work and its result as the whole reality, Vipanamritam. He and later proponents of Karma Mimamsa philosophy teach that the material existence is endless, that there is no liberation. For them, the cycle of karma is perpetual, and the best one can aim for is higher birth among the demigods. Therefore, they say the whole purpose of the Vedas is to engage human beings in rituals for creating good karma, and consequently, the mature soul's prime responsibility is to ascertain the exact meaning of the Vedas' sacrificial injunctions and execute them. Chodana lakshanorto lakshanorto dharma. Quote, duty is that which is indicated by the injunctions of the Vedas. From the Purva Mimamsa Sutra, 1.1.2. Vedanta Sutra, however, especially in the fourth chapter, which deals with life's ultimate goal, elaborately describes the soul's potential for achieving liberation from birth and death, while it subordinates ritual sacrifice to the role of helping one become qualified to receive a spiritual knowledge. As stated there, Vedanta Sutra 4.1.16. Agnihotraditu tat karya yaiva tadarshanat. Quote, the Agnihotra and other Vedic sacrifices are meant only for producing knowledge, as the statement of the Vedas show. End of quote. And the very last words of Vedanta Sutra 4.4.22 proclaim, Anabriti Shabdat. Quote, the liberated soul never returns to this world as promised by the revealed scriptures. End of quote. Thus, the fallacious conclusions of the speculated philosophers prove that even great scholars and sages are often bewildered by the misuse of their own God given intelligence, as the Katha Upanishad 1.2.5 says, Avidyayan antare Bharta manaha swayandhira panditan manyamanaha jagan niyamana pariyanti mutha ande naiva niyamana jatandha. Quote, caught in the grip of ignorance, self-proclaimed experts consider themselves learned authorities. They wonder about this world befooled like blind leading the blind. End of quote. Of the six orthodox philosophies of Vedic tradition, Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Mimamsa, and Vedanta, only the Vedanta of Badarayana Vyas is free of error. And even that only as properly explained by the bona fide Vaishnava acharyas. Each of these six schools, nonetheless, makes some practical contribution to the Vedic education. Atheistic Sankhya explains the evolution of natural elements from subtle to gross. Patanjali Yoga described the eightfold method of meditation. Nyaya set forth the techniques of logic. Vaisheshika considers the basic metaphysical categories of reality. And Mimamsa established the standard tools of scriptural interpretation. Apart from these six, there's also more deviant philosophies of the Buddhists, Jains, Charvakas, and theories of voidism and materialism deny the spiritual integrity of the eternal soul. Whose theories of voidism and materialism deny the spiritual integrity of the eternal soul. Ultimately, the only perfectly reliable source of knowledge is God Himself. The personality of God is Abadobharasa, the infinite reservoir of unfailing vision. To those who depend on Him with absolute conviction, He grants the divine eye of knowledge. Others, following their own speculative theories, must grope with the truth through the obscuring curtain of Maya. Srila Sridhar Swami prayers. I'm going to read the translation. Quote, for the bewildered soul wandering within the darkness of those exalted philosophies promoted by the harsh methods of false logic, the path of true knowledge of you, O Lord of magnificent glories, remains invisible. O Lord of Madhu, husband of the goddess of fortune, when will I come? When will I become liberated by joyfully chanting your names, Madhava, Vamana, Trinayana, Sri Shankara, Sri Pati, and Govinda? Very elaborated purpose. Jai Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Ummilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurube Namaha. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Prabhupada Swami Namine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatyadi Shatalini. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So the context is the prayers of the personified Vedas, the Shrutis. And just to recall the context, this is in response, these prayers that happens in the beginning of creation. And the Lord breathed, the Lord breath became these personified Vedas. Then the Vedas in the beginning of creation offer these prayers. And this is a narration that is given to the residents of Jambudvip by Sanatan Kumar. So Sanatan Kumar recites these prayers, and the residents of Jambudvip started to meditate on those prayers. So the personified Vedas are giving these prayers in the beginning of creation. And this narration of Sanatana Kumar to the inhabitants of Jambudvip was narrated by Naranarayan Rishi to Narada Muni. Which that narration was Sukadev Goswami answering the question of Maharaj Parikshit of how the Vedas um, can talk about that that is cannot be explained, that is transcendental. How can the Vedas teach us about something that cannot be perceived or cannot be that that is beyond this world, beyond the spirits of this world? So then Sukadev Goswami, to answer that question, told about the meeting of Narada Muni with Narayana Rishi. And Narayana Rishi, he asked the same question. And Narayana Rishi answered, yeah, actually that same question was asked by the inhabitants of Jambudvip to sage Sanatana Kumar. And here it is. So these are the prayers of the Vedas personified in the beginning of creation. So there is a nice summary that is given of these prayers. Because right now in this verse is actually how throughout the whole prayers they're establishing the position of the worship of Krishna, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the highest goal or the end of all knowledge. The conclusion of all knowledge is simply to take shelter and to surrender to Krishna. Krishna explains that also in the Bhagavad Gita, and it's just in a simple verse that he says, what is it? Oh, I got a blank. But it's famous verse in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that he said, not baby, the key verse is Jnanavam mam prapya Jnanavam mam bahunam jammana ante. That's it. Bahunam jammana ante Jnanavam mam prapadyante. Vasudeva sarvangiti samahatma sudurlava. So he says that after many births, thousands of births, those who are cultivating knowledge, the jnanis, when they come to the end of all knowledge, to the pinnacle of knowledge, they surrender to Krishna. They understand Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Krishna is everything. Samahatma Sudurlava. Such a great soul is very rare. So similarly, the Vedas are establishing that truth throughout um, these prayers. So here's a nice breakdown, an analysis of this of the prayers of the personified Vedas. The prayers of the personified Vedas are profound hymns offered by the Vedas in their personified form, glorifying the supreme absolute truth, Sri Krishna. These prayers are rich in Vedantic wisdom, reflecting themes of non-duality, advaya, jnana tattva, pure devotion, bhakti, and the ultimate goal of life, prema bhakti. So here's a summary. This is from the perspective of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So in the prayers, they establish the differences between, just like today, it went into depth into all these different philosophy schools, specifically the ones that focus on karma kanda Jnana Kanda, and mystic yoga. How all those philosophies that supports all these different paths of transcendence then are inferior to the position of connecting in devotion, in loving devotion with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with pure devotion, bhakti. So the first one is the context, Vedantic dialogue and the supremacy of bhakti. So this chapter is part of the larger narration of Sukadev Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj. It follows a question by Maharaj Parikshit inquiring about the supreme truth beyond material illusion and the process of liberation. The personified Vedas, Shrutis, the eternal wisdom of the Vedas in transcendental form, glorify the absolute truth. Sri Krishna is revealed as a supreme Brahman beyond impersonal Brahman realization and the material world. That's the first. So that's the context that I just explained. The key thematic analysis according to Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta. The absolute truth is a person, Bhagavan Sri Krishna. The Shrutis acknowledge that Brahman is ultimately personal, Bhagavan, not merely an impersonal force. In text 14 of this chapter, it states that the Supreme is both formless, nirakara, and personal, sakara. But the ultimate realization of his personal form, the ultimate realization of his personal form as Shamasundar. The impersonalist philosophers, Mayavadi, misunderstand the Vedas when they deny Krishna's form, name, qualities, and pastimes. The Gaudiya Vaishnava conclusion, the Vedanta and Sruti's ultimate culminate in bhakti, the worship of Bhagavan Sri Krishna, not in personal liberation. Krishna says that in the Bhagavad Gita also, Vedanta Shaivar Aham Eda Vedyo. By the Vedas, I am to be known. So it's quite something unnatural that the Vedas comes to that conclusion. So even in the prayers in the beginning of creation, they come to the conclusion that worshiping Krishna is the ultimate goal. And not only that, we hear the narration that Lord Brahma gives, and is in the Vedas, that the Shrutis pray to the Lord because the Lord became pleased by their prayers and offer a benediction. And what is the benediction that the Shrutis asked? They wanted to become gopis. They wanted to enjoy with the Lord in the Rasa Lila dance, and they became the Shruti gopis. So they received that benediction. So, which is quite wonderful. So, in fact, in the previous verses on this chapter, the Gopa Taittiriya Upanishad, so the Shrutis are mostly the Upanishad. And this Upanishad, Gopa Taittiriya Upanishad, was very excited as hearing the prayers of the other Upanishad and the Shrutis that couldn't contain itself and just exploded into that the highest, just glorifying the gopis, glorifying these pastimes. Maybe like a couple of verses ago, 3 verses ago, this was narrated. So our acharyas say that they couldn't contain them. She couldn't contain itself. You just have to say it like that. So, so the first thematic The first theme of these prayers is the absolute truth is a person, Bhagavan Krishna. Another thematic um, subject here is Maya cannot touch the Supreme Lord. The personified Vedas glorifies Krishna as the master of Maya, meaning that he is never affected by material illusion. Mayavadis claim that Brahman falls under illusion, Maya, and needs liberation, but this is rejected. In text 16 of this chapter, the Supreme remains transcendental even while pervading everything. Just as the sun is untouched by clouds, Bhagavan remains beyond material condition. So the conclusion of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas in this subject is that the devotee should never think that Krishna is influenced by Maya. Rather, he is the master of Maya. Mama Maya, what is it? Krishna explains that Maya is his transcendental energy, Mama Maya. Another theme is the fallacy of impersonal liberation. Many spiritual paths seek moksha, liberation, by merging into the impersonal Brahman. The truth is revealed that this is not the highest goal. In text number 21 of this chapter, the truth is acknowledged that the jiva, soul, cannot truly merge into Brahman because the soul is an eternal servant of Krishna. Jivera Swarupahoy Krishna Nityadas. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 20:108. Instead of merging into Brahma, the soul's real joy is found in loving service, bhakti. In Gaudiya Vaishnava conclusions, the ultimate goal is not Brahman realization, but prema bhakti, pure loving devotion to Krishna. Another theme of this chapter is the Supreme Lord is obtainable only through bhakti. In text 23 of this chapter, the Shrutis declare that this is the one that Shrutis couldn't resist. They have to say it. You just jump into. The Shrutis declare that only those who engage in pure devotion can truly realize Krishna. The impersonal process of jnana, knowledge, and renunciation cannot give full realization. The Vedas are ultimately meant to lead one to the service of Bhagavan. The conclusion of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, pure devotional service, Sudha Bhakti, is the only means to obtain Krishna. Another theme is the Vedas praise the sweetness of Krishna's name, form, and pastimes. The Shrutis glorify not only Krishna's greatness, Aishwarya, but also his sweetness, Madhurya. Though Krishna is the Supreme Lord, he performs human-like pastimes, Nara Alila, in Vrindavan. In verse 32, his pastimes are the highest nectar, relished by pure devotees. We're going to hear about this. Gaudiya Vaishnava's conclusions, Sri Krishna's Leela pastimes are higher than even the impersonal Brahman realization. You can see why this chapter has been commented in such a length by our Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas, is that this packs basically the whole philosophy and the whole presentation in one sense of the philosophy of the understanding of the absolute truth by the Vedas itself, which is quite something. It's the Vedas personally, the personified Vedas, explaining the inputs and the purpose of the Vedas, very clearly establishing that, which is Quite extraordinary. So apart from the theme, here's the practical application for devotees. This is the analysis. The personified Vedas confirm that the highest knowledge is bhakti. So one should, one, reject impersonal ideas and accept Krishna as the supreme. Two, engage in Nam Sankirtan, chanting the holy names, as the easiest path to realization. Three, read Srimad Bhagavatam regularly, as it is the essence of the Vedas. And four, follow the paths of Brajavasis, seeking loving service to Krishna. The conclusion, the Vedas confirms the supremacy of bhakti. The prayers of the personified Vedas in Srimad Bhagavatam 10.87 are not abstract philosophical hymns, but direct glorification of Sri Krishna's supremacy. According to Gaudiya Vaishnavism, this chapter strongly supports Bhagavan Krishna over impersonal Brahman, Prema Bhakti over moksha, Nam Sankirtan as the essence of Vedic wisdom, loving devotion as a sole eternal function. Nice, huh? So it's very important to, in one sense, study this chapter. And particularly this verse breaks down or at least give us an analysis of how these different schools of philosophy are they actually have, or the fallacies of different schools of philosophy in terms of being able to provide the full understanding of the absolute truth. And so in Vedic wisdom, there is these 6 schools of philosophy: Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, the Yoga Sutras, Purva Mimamsa, and Vedanta. Of the 6, it is established that Vedanta is the one that gives entrance to the full understanding of the absolute truth. And here's a little breakdown also of each one of these schools of philosophy. Again, it's very nicely explained in this purport. It's very packed. But here's a breakdown so you get some bullet points and that you can remember. So first with Nyaya. Nyaya is logic and epistemology, epistemology. So logic. This school this school of philosophy is headed by Gautama Rishi. Focus on logic, reasoning, and valid knowledge, pramana. Accept 4 sources of knowledge: perception, inference, comparison, and testimony. Uses logical debates to establish truth and refute false arguments. Believe liberation comes through knowledge of reality. So, bullet points. Can go deeper, into these things, but that's beyond me. Vaisheshika, which focus on atomism and metaphysics. This is headed by Kanada Rishi. And here's some of the bullet points of it. A materialistic school explaining reality through 6 categories: substance, quality, activity, generality, particularity, and inherence. Everything, including the soul, is composed of atomic particles, paramanus. Liberation is achieved by understanding the nature of existence. And then Sankhya, dualism and cosmic evolution. This is headed by Kapila Muni. Now, there is two different Kapilas. There's an atheistic Kapila, and there's Kapila Muni, who is an avatar of Lord Vishnu, but they propound the Sankhya philosophy. So there's a theistic and it's an atheistic Sankhya. The one that is most known now is the atheistic Sankhya. The theistic Sankhya philosophy of Kapila Muni is is um, is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So here's this Sankhya as is understood now. A dualistic philosophy distinguishing Purusha, consciousness, soul, from Prakriti, material nature, explains creation through the interaction of 24 elements leading to the evolution of the universe. Liberation happens when Purusha realizes its distinction from Prakriti. The yoga of Patanjali, so this is based on the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, closely linked with Sankhya but focus on the spiritual practice. Describe the Eightfold Path, Astanga Yoga, for self-discipline, meditation, and liberation. Emphasizes concentration, dhyana, ethical living, and self-restraint to achieve samadhi, spiritual absorption. And the fifth one, Purva Mimamsa, Vedic ritualism and dharma, headed by Jaimini Muni, emphasize Vedic rituals and duties, karma kanda, as the path to a spiritual progress. Holds that dharma, moral law, is known through the Vedas. Liberation is obtained through righteous actions rather than renunciation. And finally, there's the Vedanta, which is spiritual knowledge and liberation. And this is headed by Vedavyas. So it's based on the Upanishad, Brahma Sutras, and Bhagavad Gita. Most influential school focuses on Brahman, the ultimate reality, and the self, Atman. So, and in the Vedanta philosophy, is established a supremacy of bhakti through the essence of all Vedanta, which is the Srimad Bhagavatam. However, the Vedanta philosophy is also being hijacked in one sense by the impersonal Advaita philosophy. So there is this there's actually 4 major interpretations or schools within the Vedanta philosophy. One of them, actually, only one offers the full picture. So there's the Advaita school that is headed by Shankaracharya, with focus simply on the oneness of everything. So it's not complete. And then the philosophy of Vashishta Dvaita, which is established by Srila Ramanujacharya, which is a full Vaishnava philosophy that is perfect, but still it doesn't It's called Advaita, Vashishta Advaita, that within that oneness, there's there's some qualities. So it still leaves to some questioning. And then there is the Dvaita Vada of the Vedantas, of the Vedanta school, that is propounded by Srila Madhavacharya, which focus on the differences. Now, all of these schools take an aspect of the absolute truth, and they're correct. But only Sri Chaitanya brings them all together with the um, Achintya Veda, Aveda Tattva presentation. And that brings, that the absolute truth is simultaneously one and different. Thank you very much for coming. Hare Krishna. Have a nice day. So, so even then, we have to be very much exposed through the, the teachings of um, of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to take that shelter, because taking the shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu leads one to this ultimate goal of knowledge, which is taking full shelter in loving devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, in the mood of the Vrajavasis, the inhabitants of Vrindavan. And that's a great fortune that Lord Chaitanya is giving to the world. As the Yuga avatar, Lord Chaitanya comes to establish this, this most elevated truth and making accessible to everyone. So, which is quite extraordinary. And especially now, in a couple of weeks, we're going to be celebrating Gaur Purnima and absorbing ourselves during these weeks in the past tense of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the most magnanimous Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Any comments or questions? No, Krishna Archana. Hare Krishna.
When you were doing the breakdown of the Vedanta school, it struck me that is it the Nyaya school that's putting the emphasis on the mechanical process of allowing one to achieve liberation, through acquiring knowledge through mechanical means, and then the other two Vedanta schools were very much seen on the theoretical level, and then when the shift moves to
Actually, it's not Vedanta. Vedanta is one of the schools, so it's philosophical.
so shifting to the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya, that's taken into account, you could say, liberation too. There's that very practical process of connection to the supreme absolute truth um, through devotion. So the path of spirituality is made very practical on a spiritual plane. So that struck me, that incredible difference of such an elevated process compared to merely being theoretical or philosophical or even being mechanical. So that was just a thought that came to me as you were talking.
Yeah, this is a point. This very point is the one that in these last two verses the Shrutis are making. That it's almost like what is to say here? Is almost lamenting or feeling bad about all of those that don't accept the path of bhakti. And I read this is say the previous verses. How can anyone here know him who is existed prior to everything else and who gave rise to the first learned sage Brahma? So it's almost like saying that the truth is established, the supremacy of surrendering, of serving Krishna, especially, in the mood of the inhabitants of Vrindavan and specifically to the gopis. And then for all of those who are in these different schools that are actually mistaken, what is the hope there? So if you get to know this, you automatically will what else you gonna do? I mean, it's obviously, it's almost like a no-brainer. So they establishing that. So let me see if I'm. Yeah, 1 second, please. Suppose there's so all these different, and you're learning from different so-called authorities. All such authorities base their teaching on mistaken ideas that hide the truth. Such conceptions are no real basis in you, for you are transcendental to all illusion and always enjoy perfect total awareness. So is really making this very strong distinction, as you say, and then establishing this very simple path of what the Bhagavatam tells us to do. Just absorb yourself in hearing, chanting, and remembering the personality of Godhead. Vaishnava Sarananda Guru.
Thank you for transportation. I was wondering, okay, so okay, if you have any thoughts on, say, if there's a difference between knowing the Lord and loving the Lord, like how the gopis may not have so much knowledge of the Lord, but they love Him. And then Prabhupada says this word love is only applicable to Krishna, even though that's a material English word, prema for the Lord, loving the Lord, as different from knowing the Lord. If you have any thoughts.
Well, all the acharyas, and very strongly, especially Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Srila Prabhupada, they warn us that we're not the gopis. We're not in that stage. We're not in that spontaneous um, space of love in which, we don't, all these different regulations and uh, uh, philosophy and understanding and knowledge, becomes, they have no use. It's only love. We're not there, and we can even think or imitate or even try to get there. For us, it is important, just like, the Vedas is telling us here, the personified knowledge is telling us that you go through this thing. There's a process to go through, and then through that you achieve. Even the Vedas themselves, they have to go through a process of austerities, because it is explained that when they receive the benediction from Lord Vishnu, they they perform austerities, meditating constantly on the form of the Lord and the activities of the Lord, and then they achieve that position. Just quickly, because we are.
I'm just thinking how out of thousands who attain perfection, hardly one knows the truth, but it's still there's a possibility. Even in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, how they speak of how it speaks how if you cannot remember the Lord, then you should practice bhakti yoga. So it's still a possibility, right? For all of humanity, there still can be people who can attain these levels.
Oh, for sure. We all can. We just have to apply the process. And that's the ultimate goal, to achieve that. Thank you so much. Grantara Shiman Bhagavatam ki jai.